The kingdom bleeds for honor, but you bled for strangers." The King Lycan's words echoed through the wrecked cabin as Maya gazed upon the ruins of her simple life. 4 days prior, she was merely an exiled Omega counting firewood. Now, 1,000 soldiers encircled her door. The man she had warmed with her own body during the blizzard knelt before her, revealing a crown beneath his hood. But was it reverence or custody? And why had her common herbs cured the incurable poison that had claimed hundreds? Where are you watching from? Drop a like if you also feel Maya should have left that door locked. The blizzard howled like a wounded beast against the decaying wooden walls of Maya's cabin, nestled on the forgotten frontier of the northern redwood wilds. Each gust of wind carried ice crystals that impaled the aged timber like tiny daggers, creating a phantom chorus of groans and whispers. The cold was not merely a temperature. It was a physical entity gnawing at bones, seeping through the ill-fitting gaps between the planks, and transforming every breath into small clouds of vapor that swiftly vanished into the frigid air. Maya pulled the tattered blanket tighter around her shoulders, her fingers already numb even inside the cabin. She was an Omega, exiled from her original pack for being deemed too weak to endure the complete transition into her lupine form. The memory still burned like a fresh wound. The Alpha's gaze of pity mixed with disgust, the muffled laughter of the other pack members, the searing shame of failing to complete something that should have been instinctive. "You do not belong with us," Alpha Marcus Blackwood had declared, his voice echoing in her memory like a final verdict. "An Omega who cannot fully shift is an aberration. Go find your place elsewhere." Now, 6 months later, Maya counted her last remaining stores of firewood with growing despair. 3 logs. Perhaps 4 hours of warmth, if she was economical. After that, she preferred not to dwell on what came next. The northern redwood wilds showed no mercy to the weak, and she had learned that in the cruelest way. It was then she heard it. Not the wind, but the wet, desperate sound of claws tearing at the door's wood. The noise was methodical, deliberate, as if something was trying to carve a path through the solid timber. Maya froze, every self-preservation instinct screaming at her to ignore the sound. In the northern redwood wilds, what knocks during a storm often brings death. The mountain creatures were known for their cruelty, and exiles who succumbed to the cold sometimes returned as something different. But then came another sound. A low moan, almost human in its agony, and another, and another. Maya felt her heart clench. It wasn't monsters trying to get in. It was suffering trying to find refuge. Compassion, her fatal flaw and her greatest virtue, moved her hand to the latch. Her fingers trembled, not just from the cold, as she hesitated for an eternal moment. Opening that door could mean her death. But to let someone die outside when she had shelter, that would be a death of a different kind. She pulled the latch. As she opened the door, the white world revealed a nightmare that defied all logic. 25 gigantic werewolves, far larger than any common shapeshifter she had ever seen, lay piled in the snow like fallen soldiers on a battlefield. Each of them was the size of a small horse, their coats stained with a strange black ichor that fumed against the white snow, creating small craters where it dripped. The leader, a werewolf with fur black as the abyss and eyes that still burned with a feverish gold, looked directly at her before collapsing. Even in its agony, there was something in those eyes: intelligence, despair, and a silent plea that cut Maya to the bone. Maya did not see monsters. She saw pure, desperate suffering. "God of the North," she whispered. And then action took hold where thought had failed. For the next 3 days, the cabin became an improvised field hospital. Maya tore her own clothes to make bandages, transforming her only wool shirt into strips of fabric to staunch wounds bleeding that strange black ichor. The scent was nauseating, like oxidized metal mixed with something sweet and rotten. But she swallowed the bile and kept working. When the firewood ran out on the second night, she made the unthinkable decision to break her only table and chairs to feed the fire. The sound of wood splintering echoed through the cabin like breaking bones, and each piece she cast into the flames was a part of her old life, consumed by the fire. "Forgive me, Grandma," she murmured, remembering the woman who had crafted that table with her own hands. But her grandma always said that furniture could be replaced. Life could not. Maya fed the werewolves with her own dried meat, fasting as her stomach rumbled in protest. Every morsel of food that passed their lips was a piece she wouldn't eat. But seeing strength slowly return to their eyes made the hunger consuming her worth it. The hardest part was treating the wounds. The black ichor wasn't merely blood. It seemed to possess a life of its own, resisting all conventional cleaning methods. It was then Maya remembered her grandma's stories, of ancient mixtures few still knew. With trembling hands, she prepared a mixture of herbs she had gathered during the autumn. Silver belladonna root, dried moon oak leaves, and a pinch of black salt from the abandoned mines. It was a secret of her grandma, knowledge passed through generations of healers who lived on the fringes of Lycan society. The effect was immediate and profoundly unsettling. As the potent mixture touched the festering wounds, the black ichor began to froth and violently dissolve, as if seared by an invisible, ancient fire. The werewolves groaned, but not from added agony. It was a guttural, primal relief, as if a virulent poison was at last being wrenched from their very beings. Maya did not know she was battling the venom of the Peste das Sombras, a biological toxin deemed utterly incurable by the kingdom's finest healers, a blight few even dared to whisper about. She only knew her grandmother's ancient forbidden knowledge worked, and in this brutal, unforgiving world, that alone was a defiant triumph. What hidden currents flowed beneath such raw, untamed power? What depths would she plumb for compassion? The true turning point arrived with the pale light of the third morning. The black werewolf, whose ragged breathing had steadied thanks to Maya's relentless body heat, for she had slept, fiercely embracing him to transfer what warmth she could, began his profound, agonizing change. She had spent the entire night with his formidable, fever-racked body pressed against hers, feeling every shallow breath, every thunderous heartbeat, an intimacy both strange and profoundly purifying in its stark necessity. The ominous sound of bones cracking, snapping, and reshaping echoed through the profound silence of the pre-dawn. Maya jolted awake, still heavy with sleep's insistent haze, and bore witness to something that defied every Lycan lore she had ever known, every whispered legend. Where a formidable beast had rested moments before, now lay a naked man, his powerful, sculpted form covered in a tapestry of battle scars that etched sagas of countless brutal conflicts across his skin. But it wasn't solely his sudden, impossible transformation that stole her breath, that made her gasp. The man radiated an undeniable, primal aura of power that made the very air hum with unseen energy, as if the atmosphere itself instinctively bent and warped to his sovereign presence. His scars were no random marks of past skirmishes. They formed intricate patterns, cryptic battle runes that Maya vaguely recognized from her grandmother's forbidden, ancient tomes, symbols of forgotten might. King Theron Ironhide awoke not within the gilded, opulent walls of his Ethelberg palace, but on the raw, packed earth floor of a humble cabin that reeked of damp earth, musty age, and potent medicinal herbs. His first sensation was a profound, disorienting confusion. Where was the cool, polished marble of his royal chambers? Where were the soaring, ancestral ceilings painted with the glorious victories of his silver-blood lineage? Where were the whispers of his Lord Advisor, Lord Cyrus Thorne? He blinked, struggling to focus his vision through the lingering haze of fever, and saw a pale, exhaustion-etched Omega gently dabbing his fevered brow with a damp cloth. Her usually neat brown hair was disheveled, falling in tangles, and deep. Bruised circles beneath her eyes spoke volumes of endless, sleepless nights spent at his side. Yet her hands, surprisingly, were gentle, unwavering, utterly devoid of the trembling fear he was so accustomed to witnessing in those who approached his throne. Theron, the feared king protector, had expected only fear, a cowering subservience from an Omega, especially in this desperate state. Instead, she merely offered a cup of water, her gaze direct, treating him with the same resolute kindness she had bestowed upon the dying animal he had been. "How do you feel?" Her voice, though hoarse with profound weariness, carried an undeniable, genuine concern that utterly caught the battle-hardened king unprepared. Theron, his spirit forged and hardened by centuries of brutal territorial wars and insidious political betrayals, felt something truly unknown bloom within him, a strange warmth in his chest, pure, unadulterated gratitude, stripped bare of any ulterior motive. No one had genuinely inquired about his well-being in years without seeking power, influence, or royal favor in return. This strange, unassuming Omega simply cared. How rare, how precious is such compassion in a world consumed by ambition and endless demands. I am well," he lied, his voice raspy, still grappling to process his location and the impossible journey that had brought him here, to this sanctuary. His throat felt as parched as ancient, crumbling parchment. "My men." "All alive," she replied. Offering him water, he accepted with trembling hands. "It was arduous, but the venom is expelled. You were gravely ill. Poison?" Theron recalled searing fragments, the ambush, the agonizing pain as dark pierced his veins, his men's despair as they succumbed. They should have been dead. The Peste das Sombras had no known cure. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice carrying a regal authority he couldn't mask. Maya hesitated, sensing an unfamiliar weight in his tone. "I used my grandmother's recipes, ancient herbs. I didn't know if it would prevail, but—" She didn't finish, but Theron understood. She had gambled her life to save them, strangers whose worthiness she didn't know. He concealed his identity, presenting himself as a soldier. Astonished, the Omega didn't recognize his face on the kingdom's coinage. To her, he was merely a wounded man needing care. "What is your name?" he asked. "Maya," she answered simply. "And yours?" "Theron," he said, omitting titles and lineage. Just his name, as if sufficient. And strangely, it was. In the days that followed, recovering, Theron watched Maya with deepening fascination. She made no attempt to impress him or extract information. She simply cared, with quiet efficiency, like one used to forging miracles from scarcity. He saw her share her last breadcrumbs with the recovering men, saw her spend hours making medicinal teas, testing and adjusting until perfect, saw her sleep on the cold floor so the wounded could use her straw bed. And in every gesture, every kind word, Theron felt something within him shatter and rebuild. She didn't treat him as a disguised king or common soldier. She treated him as a man deserving care, simply for being there, simply for being alive. On the fourth day, the storm ceased. The sudden silence was almost deafening after 3 days of howling wind. Theron knew it was time to leave. His men, now human again and impossibly healed, awaited orders. But leaving meant returning to court reality, to political intrigues, to the golden solitude of being the most powerful man in a kingdom that feared him more than it loved. It meant leaving this brief glimpse of being just Theron, not the Lycan king. "We must go," he said softly, finding Maya preparing more medicinal tea. "Our presence here could bring trouble for you." Maya nodded, but he saw a flash of something, sadness, disappointment, cross her face before she hid it behind a polite smile. "Of course. You have families waiting for you." Theron wanted to say no, that the palace was merely a gilded fortress, that no one awaited his return with genuine love. But the words caught in his throat. Who amongst us hasn't yearned for a genuine connection, far from the gilded cages of duty? Before dawn, they departed. Theron left behind what he could, a few gold coins hidden beneath the straw pillow, shipments of timber he knew would arrive in a few days through casual merchants, provisions that would mysteriously appear. But he could not leave behind the memory of Maya's kind eyes, or the way she had risked everything for strangers without expecting anything in return. Maya, left alone once more, cleaned the empty cabin and tried not to think of how the silence now seemed larger, colder, more definitive. She had done the right thing. She always did the right thing. So why did it feel as though a part of her soul had departed with those mysterious men? Have you ever felt a silence so profound it echoed a loss you didn't know you could bear? The true shock came with the following sunrise. Maya was preparing her meager breakfast when the ground began to tremble rhythmically. It was no earthquake. It was methodical, coordinated, as if 1,000 feet marched in perfect synchronicity. What would you do if the very ground beneath your feet became a drumbeat of doom, signaling an unavoidable destiny? Maya rushed to the window, and the blood drained from her face. The horizon was no longer white. It was silver and black. A legion of 1,000 armored soldiers surrounded her cabin, their armor shimmering under the morning light like the scales of some gigantic dragon. Royal banners whipped in the wind, bearing symbols she vaguely recognized from history books. Paralyzing fear overcame her like a wave of ice. She had sheltered unknown men, which could be seen as treason to the kingdom. In times of war, giving aid to the enemy was punishable by death. What if those men were spies, deserters, rebels? Her legs failed, and she fell to her knees on the packed earth floor, expecting the door to be knocked down at any moment, waiting for the execution that would surely come. When the door opened, she squeezed her eyes shut, expecting to feel the cold steel against her neck. But the figure who entered brought no shackles or chains. Theron, now clad in full armor of polished black obsidian and bare fur, stepped into the tiny hovel. The contrast was absurd and overwhelming. The king of the werewolf world in a shack that smelled of mold and medicinal herbs. Maya opened her eyes, and the air escaped her lungs in a strangled gasp. It wasn't possible. The gentle soldier who had slept in her straw bed, who had drunk water from her cracked cups. "Majesty," she whispered, trying to bow lower, to make herself smaller. Theron did not speak immediately. He walked toward her with measured steps, each footfall echoing in the silent cabin. Then, before his stunned generals at the doorstep, he drew his sword and plunged it into the dirt floor. The sound was like thunder in the confined space. And then, before his astonished generals, the werewolf king knelt. The silence was heavier than the blizzard. Maya heard her heart thrumming, felt the chilling weight of the soldiers' shocked gazes at the door. "The kingdom bleeds for honor," King Theron's voice thundered, echoing through the rustic cabin and into the biting wind every warrior heard. "But you bled for strangers. Can you fathom such sacrifice?" He raised his head, his golden eyes, usually stern, softened as they met hers. "Maya of the northern redwood wilds, you achieved the impossible. The blight, the peste das sombras, should have claimed our lives. Its cure eludes the kingdom's most esteemed healers, yet you alone plucked us from death's maw." Maya, overwhelmed and trembling, shook her head. I merely used my grandmother's humble recipes. It was truly nothing special." "Nothing special?" Theron's voice, laced with awe and gratitude, pierced her denial. "You relinquished precious food, comfort-giving furniture, even clothes. You endured sleepless nights, tending to strangers who could have been assassins, insidious spies, or worse. To call that nothing special insults nobility. What kind of heart does that?" But this profound reverence was shattered, cut short by an unwelcome shadow at the threshold. Lord Cyrus Thorne, King Theron's uncle and Lord Advisor, strode into the ridgeback cabin with a cold, predatory smile that never reached his shrewd eyes. He was a towering, gaunt figure, silver hair impeccably slicked, his raiment woven of silks and furs that cost more than Maya's humble dwelling. "With all due respect, Your Majesty," Thorn purred, his voice smooth as silk yet sharp as honed steel. "I suggest more. Intricate matters to unravel." Theron rose, regal posture stiffening, his expression hardening like granite. "Explain yourself, Thorn. Choose your words carefully." Thorn glided effortlessly to where Maya still knelt. He plucked a pinch of the remaining herb mixture from a weathered wooden bowl, sniffing it with scientific detachment, his eyes narrowing to suspicious slits. "These particular herbs," he drawled, voice slow and deliberate, "are variants of a Conito prateado, a legendary plant universally believed vanished centuries past. A plant, mind you, rumored to thrive only in lands utterly cursed by ancient war mages." The air within the cabin congealed, pressing down, heavy with unspoken dread. Maya felt blood drain from her face, leaving her ghost pale. My grandmother taught me. She insisted they were merely common mountain herbs." "Your grandmother," Thorn continued, his tone politely venomous, "was exceptionally sagacious for a mere commoner. Wouldn't you agree? For knowledge of plants long extinct, and the secrets they hold, isn't something one learns by chance, is it?" The accusation, cloaked in civility, was lethal. Maya had not cured them by fortunate coincidence or simple compassion. She had healed them because she possessed forbidden knowledge, ancient dark witchcraft. And if she held such power, it raised profoundly disturbing questions about her intentions and origins. "Thorn." Theron's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, a barely restrained growl. "Are you daring to suggest our savior is some insidious spy? I am merely suggesting that anyone possessing such profound knowledge of vanished flora and concoctions, curing what we believed incurable poisons, merits a far more rigorous investigation," Thorn reiterated, that cold, chilling smile resurfacing. "For the unwavering safety of the kingdom, of course. For all of us." Maya felt the world tilt beneath her feet. From revered savior to chilling suspect in mere minutes, such is the cruel turn of fate. Theron's honor had swiftly morphed into a protective custody. She would be led to the palace not solely as a healer of the Pestidas Sombras, but as a pivotal witness, or a dangerous suspect. "Maya of the northern redwood wilds," Theron formally decreed, "by royal command, you shall accompany our retinue to Ethelberg, the kingdom's capital. You will be our honored guest while we delve into these unique circumstances." Guest. The word echoed hollowly, a stark irony even to her own ears. They knew, she knew, everyone knew this was no true choice. The transition to Ethelberg, the formidable capital, was brutal. 4 arduous days of travel in a royal carriage that was, in truth, a gilded prison. Maya watched the familiar mountain landscape slowly vanish, replaced by vast plains she had never glimpsed, by cities whose very names were alien to her. Ethelberg, when it finally appeared on the horizon, was a profound shock to her senses. Towers of gleaming white marble and formidable black obsidian soared skyward like the skeletal fingers of some ancient giant, and its immense walls seemed to pierce the very clouds. The palace at the city's heart stood as both an unyielding fortress and a breathtaking work of art, its spires glinting with ethereal gold and silver. For one who had lived in a humble one-room cabin, this overwhelming grandeur was almost impossible to process. The ensuing 4 months tested Maya's very sanity in ways she never could have imagined. The palace was a treacherous nest of vipers, where raw physical strength dictated every law, and she, an Omega without a pack, was seen as an exotic curiosity or a dangerous latent threat. The court ladies observed her with a potent mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled disdain, whispering behind their ornate fans about the wild peasant who had bewitched the king. The lords, in turn, treated her with a glacial politeness far more insulting than any open hostility. Theron installed her in the opulent royal chambers, publicly claiming protection, yet maintaining a torturous emotional distance that left her constantly unbalanced. The chambers, lavish beyond her wildest dreams, with golden ceilings, beds that could accommodate 6, and bathrooms with hot running water, were, nonetheless, a gilded cage. She felt the undeniable pull of the mate bond every time Theron was near. His intoxicating scent, leather, pine, and something indefinably masculine, left her utterly dizzy. But he valiantly resisted, maintaining formal and polite conversations that revealed nothing of his true feelings. He believed the mate bond was a side effect of her magical healing, a biological manipulation created by mystical herbs. And he refused to bind a woman who cherished freedom so fiercely to a king cursed by relentless war and unforgiving politics. But Maya was learning that Theron was far more complex than the fearsome warrior who ruled the kingdom with an iron fist. On nights when he thought she was sleeping, she heard him pacing the corridors, his footsteps always pausing before her door. Sometimes, she could have sworn she heard his breath on the other side, as if he longed to enter, but couldn't allow himself such a weakness. During her strolls through the palace gardens, always accompanied by guards, of course, Maya began to understand the true nature of the kingdom Theron governed. She witnessed Omegas treated as property, saw the way lesser alphas bowed in fear instead of respect, observed the poverty in the parts of Ethelberg that lay beyond the palace walls. Theron was not merely a warrior. He was a reformer attempting to dismantle the caste system that enslaved Omegas and oppressed the weak. But he was systematically blocked by the conclave of elders, led by Lord Cyrus Thorne, who benefited from the status quo. "The king has noble ideas," she overheard a court lady murmur to another during a formal dinner. "But change means instability, and instability is perilous for all of us." Maya began to comprehend why Theron carried such a burden, why his eyes sometimes seemed so weary. He was fighting a war on multiple fronts, external against the kingdom's enemies, internal against his own lord advisors. And then, during a particularly cold late autumn night, Maya discovered something that changed everything. She had become lost in the palace's labyrinthine corridors, an embarrassingly frequent occurrence, and ended up in a section clearly not intended for guests. That's when she heard low voices coming from a half-open door. "The Omega is becoming a problem." Lord Cyrus Thorne's voice was unmistakable. "Her influence over the king is growing. She is merely a peasant." Another voice, which Maya didn't recognize, responded, "How can she be a threat?" "Because the king sees her as pure," Lord Cyrus Thorne said, venom lacing his words. "He believes she represents all the good he is trying to protect. This makes him predictable, sentimental. A sentimental king is a weak king." Maya held her breath, pressing herself against the corridor wall. "And what is your suggestion?" asked the second voice. "Patience," Lord Cyrus Thorne replied. "The winter solstice feast approaches. Many things can happen during festivals: accidents, misunderstandings, revelations." Lord Cyrus Thorne's tone sent a chill down Maya's spine. She didn't fully grasp what was being planned, but she knew she was in danger. More than that, she knew Theron was too. She managed to return to her chambers unseen, but spent the entire night awake, processing what she had heard. For the first time since arriving at the palace, she felt truly alone and terrified. The first great upheaval struck during the winter solstice, precisely as Lord Cyrus Thorne had insinuated. The feast itself was a spectacle of opulence that left Maya breathless. Halls adorned with gold and crystal, banquets to sate her home village for a month, music and dance that stretched into the deepest hours. A dazzling facade for darker undercurrents, wouldn't you agree? Maya felt utterly displaced in her borrowed gown, a sapphire silk creation worth more than her humble ridgeback cabin. She lingered at the periphery, observing political intrigues unfold around her like an intricate, perilous dance. Then it happened. During the traditional midnight toast, King Theron Ironhide's elite guard collapsed, one after another. Pink foam frothed from their mouths, and their veins darkened with the same abyssal substance Maya instantly recognized. Peste das Sombras. Again. Panic seized the grand hall. Ladies shrieked, lords recoiled, and the royal healers rushed forward to the fallen guards. But Maya saw it in their faces. They had no answers. They had never witnessed the Peste das Sombras before, much less knew how to treat it. Theron stood beside his men, his expression a mask of fury and despair. "Where are the healers?" he roared. "Save them!" "Your Majesty," the royal healer stammered, trembling. We have never seen anything like this. We do not know how." Maya saw one of the guards, a young man who had been gentle to her during her walks in the Ethelberg gardens, convulse violently. He would die in minutes if nothing was done. The decision was instantaneous. Maya surged forward, shoving the bewildered healers aside. "Out of the way!" "Maya, no!" Theron seized her arm, his grip urgent. "It's too perilous, if it's contagious." She met his gaze, and he saw steely resolve there. "I know how to treat this, but I must act now." Theron hesitated for a moment that stretched into an eternity, then released her arm. "How would you face such a choice?" But Maya did not sprint away to gather herbs this time. Instead, she snatched a decorative dagger from a nearby table and, before the entire aghast court, sliced open the palm of her own hand. Her blood, crimson and warm, dripped onto the mouth of the dying guard. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The soldier's eyes glowed with silver light. The pink foam ceased to escape his lips, and the dark veins began to clear. In mere seconds, he was breathing normally once more. A deathly silence descended upon the hall. Maya repeated the process with the other guards, each drop of her blood saving a life. But with each miraculous cure, something shifted within her. Her skin grew paler, her movements slower, as if she were transferring her life force into them. When the last guard was healed, Maya swayed. Theron caught her before she could fall, and it was then that he saw it. Her eyes, too, now blazed with that same silver, not the golden hue of common Lycans. "What are you?" he whispered. Lord Cyrus Thorne appeared beside them, his face a mask of calculated interest. "What are you truly, Maya of the northern redwood wilds?" And then he spoke the words that changed everything. "You are a Silverblood scion." The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Silverblood scions were legend, a royal Omega lineage thought extinct 1,000 years past. Their blood could purify or destroy the werewolf's animalistic side, depending on the scion's will. "Impossible," Maya whispered. I am merely Maya. Merely Maya." Lord Cyrus Thorne offered a cold smile. "Whose blood possesses magical properties that could heal or kill any werewolf in the kingdom. Merely Maya, whose lineage, if proven, would predate the current dynasty. Merely Maya, who could by right of blood claim the throne." The words fell like bombs in the hall's stunned silence. Maya was no longer a suspicious peasant. Politically, she was a profound threat to King Theron's throne. If her lineage were confirmed, she held legal right to rule over all werewolves. Can you truly grasp the weight of such a revelation? The seismic shift it wrought upon this ancient kingdom. "This changes everything," Lord Cyrus Thorne continued, his voice laced with feigned concern. "A threat to the throne cannot be ignored, no matter how gentle she may be." King Theron Ironhide slowly rose, still holding Maya, his expression unreadable. "Thorn, are you suggesting—" "I am suggesting that the laws of the kingdom are clear. Pretenders to the throne must be judged by the conclave of elders, and if they are determined to pose a threat to stability—" Lord Cyrus Thorn did not need to finish. All knew the fate of pretenders deemed dangerous. Maya felt her world fragmenting. In minutes, she had transformed from savior to condemned. The look on Theron's face. He considered Thorn's words. He had to. It was his solemn duty as king. "There is an alternative," Lord Cyrus Thorn said softly. "A blood trial." The hall grew even more silent, if possible. A blood trial was ritual combat to the death, where a champion defended the accused's innocence. A win meant innocence before the gods. A loss. "I will be your champion," King Theron Ironhide declared immediately. "Your Majesty," Lord Cyrus Thorn protested, "this is exceedingly irregular. A king fighting for a rival claimant." "She is no rival," King Theron Ironhide said, his voice cutting through the hall like a sharpened blade. "She is the woman who saved my life and the lives of my men. I will be her champion, and may the gods decide the truth." But the words rang hollow even to him. For deep down, Theron knew Thorn was right about one thing. The laws were clear, and he had sworn to protect those laws, even when they tore him apart from the inside. The night before the blood trial, sleep eluded Maya. She wandered through the chambers that had been her home for months, her fingers brushing over luxurious objects that never truly felt like her own. Through the window, she could glimpse the courtyard where the judgment would unfold at dawn. How many nights had she spent in such opulence, yet felt like a ghost in its grandeur? It was then she resolved to do something desperate. If she was to die, she would uncover the truth behind her fate. Dying blindly? That was a surrender her spirit refused. Maya knew that Lord Cyrus Thorn's private library lay a few corridors below her own quarters. She had seen servants entering and exiting with documents during her walks. If there were answers about her lineage, about the Peste das Sombras, about anything, they would be hidden there. Where else would the true history of the Silverblood reign be kept? Luck was with her, or perhaps Lord Cyrus Thorn was too arrogant to believe a mere peasant would attempt espionage. The library stood unoccupied, illuminated only by a few flickering candles that cast dancing shadows across shelves laden with ancient books and scrolls. Did he truly believe a Silverblood scion, even one in exile, would lack the fire to fight for her own truth? Maya searched for hours, not knowing precisely what she sought, until her fingers brushed against a locked drawer in an ornate desk. The lock was simple, and she managed to pry it open with a hairpin. What she found there sent a chill through her very veins. Detailed documents on the creation of the Peste das Sombras, reports of tests in remote villages, correspondence between Lord Cyrus Thorn and other members of the Conclave of Elders discussing how to use the toxin to keep the population dependent on the king's military protection. The Peste das Sombras was no enemy attack. It was a fabrication by the Conclave of Elders itself, a political tool to ensure the people remained terrified and grateful for royal protection. Could you truly grasp such a betrayal? A plague, not of nature, but of political design. And there was more. Maps showing where the next attacks would occur, lists of villagers who would be sacrificed for the kingdom's security. Plans to use the Peste das Sombras to eliminate political opposition. Maya felt a surge of bitter revulsion rising in her throat. How many had perished to keep Lord Cyrus Thorn and his allies in power? How many families torn asunder by a disease crafted by the very leaders sworn to protect them? But the worst document was the last. A letter dated only a week prior. The Omega has proven more troublesome than anticipated. Her influence over the king is undeniable, and her healing abilities render our usual methods ineffective. I recommend using the upcoming festival to eliminate her in a manner that appears accidental. The king must learn that sentiment is a weakness a ruler cannot afford. Do you hear the cold calculation in those words? Maya read the letter 3 times before fully processing its meaning. Lord Cyrus Thorne had planned to kill her during the festival. The attack on the guards was no coincidence. It was a trap to force her to publicly reveal her powers. And she had walked right into their snare. With trembling hands, Maya gathered the most incriminating documents and concealed them within her clothes. She had evidence now, but would it be enough? And, more crucially, would she live long enough to wield it? The day of combat dawned cold and clear. The palace courtyard, transformed into an arena, featured grandstands erected overnight for the entire court, and crucial citizens keen to witness the spectacle. Maya was led into the courtyard in silver chains, not for physical peril, but as blood trial tradition dictated. She felt small, utterly exposed at the arena's core, hundreds of eyes fixed upon her. King Theron Ironhide entered the arena, clad in simple combat armor, devoid of the royal embellishments he typically bore. He carried his ancestral sword, a blade that had drunk the blood of countless foes. Lord Cyrus Thorne, his opponent, stood equally armed. Despite his age, he was a formidable warrior, famed for his combat cruelty and cunning. He held a conviction King Theron lacked, an absolute belief his actions were righteous. "May the gods judge the truth," High Elder Silas intoned the ritual words. "May the blood spilled here today reveal the accused's innocence or guilt." The combat erupted fiercely. King Theron fought like a demon, yet Maya discerned a troubling anomaly. His movements, typically fluid and lethal, were marginally sluggish. His breath came in ragged gasps. It was then the truth dawned upon her. During months within the palace, King Theron had unconsciously shared his vitality through a nascent mental link he desperately tried to deny. The closer they grew, the more inextricably intertwined their vital essences became. And now, with her life hanging precariously, a portion of his strength was being siphoned away, an instinctive drain to shield her. The mate bond, which both had fiercely fought to repudiate, was quite literally debilitating him. Lord Cyrus Thorne perceived this debilitating weakness and exploited it without mercy. His assaults grew more aggressive, more chillingly calculated. And when he finally struck King Theron a mortal blow with a poisoned blade, concealed within his armor, Maya felt as if her own heart had been physically pierced. His agony became hers, transmitted through the very link they had denied for so long. She crumpled, a guttural scream tearing from her throat, and in that moment of absolute anguish, the truth exploded through her like a blazing supernova. Can you comprehend such a bond? The mate bond was not artificial. It never had been. It was predestined, etched upon their very souls long before their paths ever crossed. The herbs had not forged a false connection. They had merely stripped away the barriers that obscured its true, fated manifestation. King Theron was dying, and with him, a part of Maya she hadn't even known existed. But instead of rushing to his side, instead of attempting to heal him with her silver blood, Maya executed an act utterly unforeseen. She raced towards the Cadera de Oso. The Cadera de Oso stood on a raised platform, a grim sentinel overlooking the arena floor. An ancient seat, it had been painstakingly carved from the very bones of the first werewolf king a millennium ago. Whispers of legend claimed that only those of divine right could dare to grace its surface without being utterly consumed by its ancestral magic. What courage, what desperation, must compel a soul to defy such an omen? Maya ascended the marble steps with unwavering resolve, the silver chains that bound her wrists now feeling like mere adornments, powerless against the storm brewing within her. The vast crowd fell into a hushed reverence, a collective breath held captive as she drew nearer to the fabled throne. "Stop." Lord Cyrus Thorne's voice ripped through the sudden silence from the arena, his own ambition momentarily eclipsing his fury over Theron's wounded form. "You have no right." Yet, who could deny the right of a heart beating with such fierce truth? But Maya did not falter. She turned, her gaze sweeping across the multitude. And when she spoke, her voice, resonated through the courtyard, imbued with a raw primal power that had awakened deep within her very soul. I invoke the Ley da Mai Prateada. A silent thunder seemed to crackle and vibrate through the very air of the courtyard. The Ley da Mai Prateada. It was an archaic decree, a law so ancient it was woven into the very fabric of their history, granting the matriarch of the Silverblood lineage absolute authority in times of imminent regicide. For generations, many had dismissed it as mere legend, a comforting bedtime story. But was it truly just a story, when power like this hummed in the air? Then, with the weight of ages settling upon her shoulders, Maya sat upon the Cadera de Oso. The effect was instantaneous, terrifying, and utterly divine. The chair itself ignited with a blinding silver light, a radiant cascade that surged through Maya like molten fire. Ancient power coursed through her veins, a symphony of generations, and she felt the palpable presence of every Silverblood scion who had walked before her, a legion of ancestors lending their might. Can you even imagine such a connection? The entire army, comprised of ancient blood werewolves, was struck by an undeniable compulsion, a command etched into the very helix of their DNA. They knelt as a single unified entity, not out of fear, but from a profound biological recognition. Their wolf souls, unyielding and untamed, knew themselves to be in the presence of their true queen. Lord Cyrus Thorne attempted to rally, roaring commands at the soldiers, but they were rooted to the spot, unable to move against her. It was physically impossible, a futile endeavor akin to trying to command one's own heart to cease beating, or one's lungs to halt their rhythmic breath. "Arrest Lord Cyrus Thorne," Maya commanded, her voice now carrying the undisputed weight of 1,000 years of royal authority, a decree echoing with the power of the primal earth itself. The soldiers moved as if marionettes, their actions not their own, swiftly encircling Lord Cyrus Thorne and disarming him. He struggled, he bellowed, but it was all in vain. The Ley da Mai Prateada was absolute, an unassailable law beyond mortal defiance. Only then did Maya descend from the luminous throne, her feet barely touching the marble as she ran to where Theron lay bleeding on the arena floor. The peste das sombras, a vile corruption, spread visibly through his veins, and she could already glimpse the creeping shadow of death in his fading eyes. "Please," she whispered, her trembling hands cupping his cooling face. "Please don't leave me." Theron managed a faint ghost of a smile. You are magnificent," he rasped, his voice barely a breath. "A true queen." "Not without you," Maya responded, her voice thick with unshed tears. And then she made the ultimate choice, one that would irrevocably intertwine both their destinies forever. She did not merely offer her blood to heal him. She offered the complete, unreserved acceptance of their mate bond. A sacred pact, knowing intimately that this profound gift would come at an immeasurable cost. "I choose you," she declared, pressing her bloodied hand against his grievous wound. "Forever. Without conditions, without fear, without doubts. I choose you." The healing was unlike any before. Instead of merely neutralizing the venom, Maya's blood and Theron's very life force became completely entwined. She felt the darkness recede from him, but simultaneously, something vital left her. When it concluded, Theron was healed, but Maya collapsed. The cure demanded an unforeseen price. By purifying Theron and, through him, the entire army from Lord Cyrus Thorne's corruption, she had lost her natural ability to generate body heat. She trembled violently as cold consumed her from within, despite the warm day. It was as if winter had permanently settled deep within her bones. "Maya." Theron caught her, immediately sensing the change. Her skin was glacial, her lips a chilling blue. "It's all right," she whispered through chattering teeth. "It was my choice." But Theron immediately understood the truth. The power she used to heal them came with a cost. She would now eternally depend on her mate bond's touch to survive the perpetual winter of her altered physiology. A permanent physical vulnerability in exchange for absolute political power. Theron tore off his cloak, wrapping her in it and pulling her close against his warmth. "Then I will keep you warm," he promised, "forever." As the two embraced in the arena's center, the kingdom watched in silence. The blood trial had concluded, yet in ways no one could have foreseen. Maya then revealed the damning documents she had found, exposing Lord Cyrus Thorne's conspiracy before the entire court. The evidence was undeniable. The conclave of elders had created the very threat they claimed to combat. Lord Cyrus Thorne and his co-conspirators were arrested, but the damage to the kingdom's institutions was irreparable. How could the people ever trust leaders who had poisoned them for power? The solution came from an improbable source. Maya, using her newfound authority as a Silverblood scion, dissolved the conclave of elders and established a new system of governance. Instead of an absolute king, there would be a co-regency. She as Queen Healer, responsible for the people's health and well-being, and Theron as King Protector, for their security and justice. Power would be shared, balanced, and always subject to the greater good. It was not an easy process. There was resistance, minor revolts, and coup attempts by nobles benefiting from the old system. But every time the people saw Maya curing the sick without asking for anything, every time they saw Theron fighting alongside common soldiers instead of commanding from afar, the opposition dwindled. The first winter of their reign was brutal. Maya battled against her new condition, at times trembling so violently she could not steady a pen to sign decrees. But Theron never let her face the chill alone. He restructured his entire schedule to ensure he was always close enough to warm her, and slowly, they learned to operate as a true unit. "Do you regret it?" Theron asked one night, as they embraced before the hearth in their private chambers. Maya considered the question with profound seriousness. She had lost her physical independence, traded a simple life for responsibilities that sometimes overwhelmed her. But when she looked at him, at the man who had sacrificed his pride to save her, who had changed centuries-old laws to forge a more just kingdom. "No," she said simply. "I would choose you again. I would choose everything again." The kingdom slowly healed under their leadership. The caste system that oppressed Omegas was abolished. Hospitals were erected in every city, staffed with healers trained in the methods Maya had perfected. The army was restructured to serve the people instead of intimidating them. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was better, and each day they toiled to make it a little better still. Years later, when they recounted the story to the kingdom's children, they always ended it the same way. True strength did not come from claws or blood magic, but from the willingness to sacrifice for others, even when those others were strangers in the snow. And every night, when winter enveloped the palace, Theron held Maya close in his arms, warming her against the cold that would never truly leave her. It was a constant reminder of the price of her power, but also of their love. The army still stood at the gates, but now they guarded something different. Not a warrior king ruling through fear, but a queen healer and her king protector, united in purpose and love, working to forge a world where no one would need to die alone in the cold. If you have journeyed with us through this tale of Maya and Theron, of an Omega who risked everything for strangers and found her true power in compassion, then subscribe for more epic sagas of werewolf kings and unexpected queens. Ring that notification bell to never miss a story of loyal rulers, transformative love, and the kind of heroism that reshapes entire kingdoms. Remember, true strength lies not in wielding power over others. It is in using any power you possess to elevate them.